Hello everyone, welcome to my channel or welcome back to my channel. This is Gracie Wang. I am a CPA and product manager. I'm passionate about teaching people accounting and product management. I'm not showing my face on this video because I got really bad cat allergies when I rescued 2 cats with my friend recently. If you live in California and you're interested in adopting 2 cats or one of those 2 really cute cats, please let me know. They are extremely cute and adorable. I petted them, so I have really bad allergies, and that's why I'm not showing my face. Regardless, this will be a quality content, I promise. In this video, I'll be focusing on the Guideline public companies approach. If you have watched the Intro to Business Valuation Part 2, you should be fairly familiar with these graphs that I'm showing on this screen. To orient us where GPC approach lives in the universe of business valuation approaches, I put GPC and GT under market approach. Both of these approaches look at what's happening on the open market to determine the business value of this private company that we want to evaluate. A quick definition of GPC approach. This approach involves comparing the private company to publicly traded companies that are similar in terms of industry, size, growth, profitability, risk, and many other factors. So it's like this little house in my example from Intro to Business Valuation Part 2. When you want to evaluate an investment opportunity, which is right here, this house where my cursor is, you want to look at companies on the open market that are similar. You do not look at companies that are not similar. And again, whether we think it's similar or not similar is somewhat subjective. So valuation analyst takes a lot of time in determining what is a similar company. And I'll get to that in just a little bit. So just a high level, remember you're comparing yourself to similar public available, public traded companies, and then determine your private company's value. Now let's move on to how does GPC work? I divided GPC approach into 5 major steps or stages. First, you start with a selection of comparable companies. This is when valuation analysts analyze all the companies available in the open market and decide what other companies similar to the company I'm trying to evaluate. Once you put together a list, then you start analyzing the financial statements and metrics and market conditions and industries related to the companies that are similar, comparable companies that are similar to the private company you're evaluating, as well as the financials of the private company you're evaluating. And then because it's really rare to find the exact same companies in the public sector to compare to the private sector, you have to make adjustments to account for any differences between the public companies for comparison to your private company. Then you apply this multiple to the private company. Say, for instance, you found a list of companies that are public, they're similar to your private company. And then you say, okay, these companies are 1,000 size, 1,000 times the revenue of the revenue that this private company is generating. Therefore, the multiple is 1 divided by 1,000. We generally say multiple because math-wise, that's easier to understand. It's a lot harder when I ask you to divide by 1,000 times, divide by 2,000 times. So whenever you hear multiple in private equity allocation, just know that is a method to compare 2 different companies. Number 5, we have adjustments of other factors. So even after you apply adjustment to multiples and then you calculate your enterprise value, right? All of this goes to calculate an enterprise value, which is, you can think of it as the price tag of how much you're willing to pay for this business. If you're not familiar with enterprise value, please go back to watch Intro to Business Valuation Part 2. I'll link that video here too. So in the last step, after you already calculate a final result of enterprise value, that actually doesn't stop there. you can apply even more adjustment to this enterprise value and calculate your adjusted enterprise value. Because say, for instance, this company could be facing a litigation that you know will negatively impact this private company, then you have to adjust the value down to account for the pending lawsuit that's coming out soon. All of this may be kind of abstract to talk about, so I made a easy example for us to go through. So let's start with the selection of comparable companies. Let me zoom in. Okay, let's say I'm Chrissy and I have a Chrissy's Mexican salad company, and this is a private company. I'm getting evaluated because some PE firms just put money into just investing in me, and they're trying to decide whether my company value has gone up or gone down, how my company as their investment is doing. So the first thing valuation analysts will do is to put together a list of publicly traded companies that are similar to what I'm doing in my business. So because I'm a Mexican salad company, I picked valuation analysts helped me pick Chipotle, Taco Bell, and Sweetgreen. I really like Chipotle because just for the shock value, a lot of people didn't realize Chipotle is trading at a stock price of over $2,000. Okay, so I decided these are similar because they are chain companies focusing on salad and they're Mexican. Great, so I have my comparable companies. Now moving on to financial analysis. So after some analysis, the valuation analysts decide to use EBITDA as the key metric to measure Chrissy's Mexican salad company against these comparable companies. EBITDA means earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It's a common metric that we use in financial analysis to determine the earning ability of a company. So we decided to use that metric. So think about if you're comparing two people, you can think of this, are we comparing those people based on their height? Are we comparing those two people based on their age? So this is just one aspect of how you compare something. And you want to make sure those information available. So in this case, EBITDA is a commonly used metric for public company, and the Chrissy's Mexican salad company also provides EBITDA on their financial statement, so we're good to go. Moving forward, we are coming to making adjustment to the multiple. We have decided that we have EBITDA, right? And now all we need to know is we need to find a multiple to get us to enterprise value, because again, whatever approach you're trying to valuation trying to perform using different approaches like GPC or guideline transactions or discounted cash flow, your end goal is to try to calculate enterprise value, and you need a multiple in order to get you from EBITDA, which is the metric we selected, to enterprise value. So I put together this formula. Hope that's easier to understand. So you have, right, we need EV, enterprise value, divided by EBITDA, which is what we call the multiple, and we generate the multiple based on the comparable companies that we picked. And then we times the EBITDA of Chrissy's Mexican salad company. Again, EBITDA is on Chrissy's Mexican salad company's financials. This is a very common metric to have on financial statement. So if you do the math, EBITDA cancels with EBITDA when you multiply them together, and then all you have is EV, and that gives you enterprise value of this company. That will get us to the goal. But then again, at step 4, we actually need to adjust for the multiple, because no two companies are the exact same. There must be some difference. And like I said, Chipotle is great. It has all the technology and brand recognition, and same thing with Sweetgreen, the other public company, as well as Taco Bell. Chrissy's Mexican salad company don't have those. So let's say we say the multiple is 10 before adjustment, and now considering that we have some differences between Chrissy's company and the public comparable companies, let's say we'll adjust the multiple down to 8. And then once you apply 8 to the calculation, you can still make more adjustment to adjust the calculated enterprise value. So putting everything together, I created this table down here as a summary. And I'll walk through the steps again. This is the calculation summary. These are the metric we selected, which is EBITDA. You also have to pay attention to the key driver period because you want to compare apple to apple, right? It wouldn't be fair if you take 10 years ago Chipotle's EBITDA and compare with today's Chrissy's company's EBITDA. You're not in the same period, and that's not a good apple-to-apple comparison. You're comparing apple to oranges. So you pick the same time period, and you decide on the revenue, decide on the key driver metric, which is EBITDA in this case. And then you have the value. Let's say on Chrissy's financial, we have 60 as the EBITDA. So the 60 is Chrissy's financial. And this valuation multiple is 8. Like we said, we started with 10, then we decide there's some differences between Chrissy's company and those public comparable companies, so we're adjusted down to 8. And in private equity, when you say multiple, you always put an X at the end to suggest that this is a multiple. It is meant to apply to some numbers to get to an end result. This is only a middle step. Okay? Then how do you calculate enterprise value? You use the value of key driver, in this case, EBITDA from time period NTM. NTM stands for next 12 months. So 60 times 8 is 240. Oh, is it? Just kidding. I lied. It's 48. 480. Great. Find my own math mistake. Oops. All right, so now we're in the correct spot. So enterprise value, A times B, 60 times 8, 480. And then you can apply additional adjustment as you see fit. This requires a lot of professional judgment from valuation analyst. Therefore, I'm applying 20 for easy math. And therefore, you have adjusted enterprise value for 60. So now the price that I have for my company is for 60. Usually in private equity allocation, all these numbers are denoted either in thousands or millions. So I could be worth a lot more than just $460. Now let's talk about the selection of comparable companies. This is I would say this is arguably the most difficult part of using GPC approach. And this is the bread and butter of GPC approach. So what makes identifying comparable companies so difficult? Well, first of all, the factors to consider are a ton, and this is not even a comprehensive list. So as you can see, you have to consider relative size, earnings quality, level of investment in physical property, past earnings stability, age of business, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on and on. And as if this is not enough, you also have to have a sufficient amount of sample, right? As we all learned in math class or stats class, the more supporting evidence you can find, the more reliable the conclusion could be. So valuation analysts need to have enough number of comparable companies to have a confidence in their valuation. Some of the threshold I put on here is they can use as few as 2 to 3 comparable companies, and it would be really good to have 4 to 7 comparable companies. Actually, once you have at least 4 companies for comparison that you feel confident about, like the confidence in their valuation rise very sharply. If you can find 8 or more, that is amazing. You get a gold star. Kudos to you. Great job, valuation analyst. So this is a high level of what makes valuation using GPC approach difficult. And because there's a lot of subjectivity involved and a lot of professional judgment, and you can argue one thing, or you can argue for one thing, at the same time argue against one thing. There's a lot of stories, or aka drama, in this world of private equity allocation. And I'm gonna share 2 stories that I think is really interesting and gives you a little bit insight on how difficult and subjective it is to do business valuation, and why it is really important to have good valuation analysts to do this job. So story first, story number 1 is the estate of Mark S. Gallo case. Mark Gallo is one of the family member from the Gallo family. The Gallo Wine Company, it is the largest wine producer in the world. So if you like wine, if you have had wine, you probably had some of the wines produced by the Gallo wine family. And this family has always run it as a family-owned private business. So when the family member, Mark Gallo, passed away, it was very difficult to estimate how much his shares are worth in the Gallo Wine Company, because again, this company has been private since its incorporation. And to make it even more difficult, at the time when he passed away, when people need to do the valuation of the company and therefore determine how much his share is worth, there was only one publicly traded wine company on the market. And very sadly, that company, that public wine company, is no comparison to Gallo Wine Company. That one company is really small. It doesn't have a strong brand recognition, right? So it's very difficult. You don't have enough samples, right? And from the family's perspective, they don't want the valuation to be super high, because the higher the valuation is, the more estate tax they need to pay. But from the United States taxing authorities' perspective, which is called IRS, they of course want to have a super high valuation for the Gallo Wine Company, so that they can tax the family on their estate. So they went to court, and what the court decided, the valuation analyst they hired, is that they recognize the strong international brand of Gallo Wine Company and the variety of sub-brands they own. So they actually put together a list, I think it's somewhere between 10 to 16 comparable companies on the market that includes beer company, distillery, and soft beverages company, to recognize the impact and industry leading position of Gallo Wine Company. In the end, the taxing authority was able to drive up the valuation for Gallo Wine Company, and they collected over 3,000K of estate tax in 1985. I did the calculation. That is worth of over $1 million in today's time. Right? So very difficult, lots of subjectivity, anything can happen. And the second story is also quite interesting. It's about Ryder versus US. Basically, the court decided companies that manufacture toys or toys and games are not sufficiently similar to a company that produced two types of games, probably because their products appealed to and were used by different age group. Sorry, I missed age groups. So basically what happened is a private company is getting evaluated. This private company produces two types of games, and the valuation analysts put together a comparable companies full of companies that manufacture toys or toys and games. However, the court came in and said, wait, if the games are used by different age group, then it's not sufficient to just compare it blankly like a cookie cutter to company that manufacture toys, because small age group children are easily satisfied with cheaper toys, toys that don't have multiple version updates. However, as kids get older, when they're different age groups, say they become teenager, they want more expensive toys. Say for instance, they will want video games, and video games may require a game console, or they require better computer equipment, and that is a completely different revenue level compared with companies that manufacture toys to younger age group kids. So that just goes to show you how detailed and well-rounded your analysis has to be when you're an evaluation analyst doing GBC approach. And here is actually a list of business valuation experts who got disqualified because of their valuation didn't stand up to court examination. And again, just as a reminder, GBC is a lot of fun because there's a lot of analysis and opinions, but also at the same time, when people are not careful or just different circumstances happen, not everything can stand in court and hold water. Last but not least, why do we use GPC? What are the pros and cons? So pros, we have relatively objective data when we look at publicly traded companies. These companies have public information disclosed that is required by most countries' exchange committee. In the United States is SEC, and all of their financial must be audited by a reputable accounting firm. My firm, PwC, does this a lot. So it's more relatively objective and reliable data. And second, it's efficient marketplace information, right? Because you are letting the demand and supply play out and you observe the data from the marketplace as opposed to a private company that has not been tested by the market. What are the cons? Lack of comparability between public companies and private companies. As I demonstrated in the storytime examples, very difficult to establish credible similarities between public companies and private companies. It's not impossible, but it is very difficult, takes a lot of work, and it's very expensive to hire professional valuation analysts to perform the services. Second, emotional nature of stock market. As we all know, sometimes stock market reacts to the traders, stock participants' emotions, and they do not always reflect the most accurate information about how much a company is actually worth. So that's something we always have to keep in mind and consider. This is not a complete pros and cons list of GPC, but those are the most notable one, and that concludes this video. Hope you have learned something from GPC approach, and this will be a foundation piece to understand other approaches that I will soon record videos for. Thank you for watching.